She said it loud enough for the man behind us in the airport line to hear. He looked at me, then looked away, embarrassed for me, as if he'd just witnessed someone drop a glass and pretend it didn't shatter. I stood still. The ticket envelope trembled in my hands. My name was on it, Florence Marie. But the voice that echoed in my ears didn't belong to the little girl I once tucked into bed. That voice belonged to someone else now. Someone who had traded tenderness for ambition. My daughter, Courtney. I didn't say a word. Not when she snatched the passports from my purse. Not when she rolled her eyes like I was a delay she'd tolerated for too long. My silence wasn't weakness. It was memory. It was every sleepless night and cold meal I'd endured to keep her dreams alive. And now, in the bright, indifferent light of Gate 36A, she looked at me like luggage she didn't want to check in. So I did something I never imagined I'd do. I tore the tickets, slowly, carefully, like I was opening a wound with intention. One rip, then another. The noise was soft, but in Courtney's world, where everything was timed and controlled, it was thunder. She gasped as if I'd just betrayed her. But I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. If you've ever been disrespected by someone you love, this story will speak to your heart. The kitchen was cold that morning, even though the sun was coming in full through the window. October light has a way of warming only what it touches. The rest of the room stays cold, like memory. I stood there with my tea, staring at the photo stuck on the fridge door. Courtney, 7 years old, in a red wool coat I found secondhand. She was smiling, that toothy open smile children have before the world teaches them to be calculating. I had my arm around her. My face was worn but proud. That was taken at the airport too. Back then, we were going to visit my sister in Florida. I had saved for a year for those tickets, cleaned houses on weekends, packed sandwiches so I wouldn't have to buy lunch. Back then, she held my hand and said she'd never leave me. I reached up and straightened the magnet that held the photo. It was shaped like a sunflower, a gift from Courtney when she was in 5th grade. "Because you're always warm, Mom," she'd said. I hadn't moved the magnet in years, and yet that morning, the morning of the trip, I did. I slid the photo into a drawer. It didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like closing a chapter, quietly, like placing a flower on a grave. Courtney was already honking from the driveway. 3 sharp, irritated beeps, the kind that doesn't ask, just commands. I shuffled down the front steps, holding onto the rail. My knees don't like stairs anymore, she knew that. She also knew I refused to use a cane, not out of pride, but because every time I picked it up, I could hear my late husband saying, "Not yet, Flo. You're still stronger than you think." She rolled down the window. "Seriously, Mom, we're going to miss check-in because of your drama." I didn't answer. I just opened the passenger door and sat down slowly, folding my coat over my lap. Her phone was on the dashboard, playing some podcast about productivity and million-dollar mindsets. Halfway to the airport, she said it, flat, like it was nothing. "I told the airline we won't need assistance. I'm not pushing a wheelchair through security." That's just embarrassing. The words didn't hit me all at once. They settled, like dust on a shelf you stop noticing. She wasn't embarrassed when I worked 2 jobs to pay her tuition. She wasn't embarrassed when I stood in line for food stamps after her father died. But now I was an inconvenience, a visual liability. I turned my face to the window so she wouldn't see my eyes fill. Outside, the highway rolled on, indifferent. My hands clenched in my lap, remembering the photo I had put away. At the terminal, Courtney stormed ahead, her designer carry-on wheels ticking over the tiles like she was late for a board meeting. I walked behind her, slower, steady. I wasn't trying to make a point. My legs simply had their own pace now. That's when I felt it in my pocket. Something small, round. I pulled it out. Her necklace. The one with the tiny C pendant I gave her on her 18th birthday. She had worn it nearly every day for years, until newer things came along. Shinier gifts from lovers, bosses, self-gifting sprees. but she still kept this one in her travel pouch. She must have dropped it when she snatched her passport earlier. I could still hear her voice echoing from that moment, sharp and dismissive. "I'll handle it. Just don't touch anything." I held the necklace in my palm. The metal was warm from my skin. For a second, I imagined walking up and slipping it into her hand without a word, like I used to slip coins into her lunchbox. But something in me hesitated. Not out of revenge, out of understanding. She wouldn't even notice it missing. Not until much later. And when she did, she'd remember where it came from, who it came from. I tucked it into my own purse. Sometimes love doesn't show itself in giving. Sometimes it waits, quietly, to be missed. Behind me, a little boy tugged at his mother's hand and whispered, "Grandma?" And I felt my throat close. We sat at the gate in silence. Courtney was glued to her phone, thumbs dancing over the screen like the world depended on her replies. I sat with the coffee she bought me, not out of kindness, but because she didn't want me wandering off while she scrolled. It was lukewarm now. I hadn't taken a sip. I watched the foam go flat, the way people watch rain slide down a window. Something small and quiet was dying in me, like the idea that maybe this trip, this one gesture, might bring us closer. Courtney finally looked up. "Drink it, Mom. It's $5. I blinked. $5. As if the cost mattered more than the care. I smiled faintly, not at her, but at the memory of a different coffee. One I poured into a thermos when she was 10 and had a school play. I waited outside the gym, sipping it through the chill of the evening. She'd forgotten her lines that night, burst into tears on stage. I wrapped her in my coat when she came running. "You did perfect," I'd said. "You were brave." She had sobbed into my shoulder. Now here we were, two adults, one sipping success, one watching a cooling cup. I reached into my bag and touched the necklace. She hadn't even noticed. Next to us, a family laughed. A mother, 2 daughters, paper bags of snacks on their laps. I didn't cry. I just breathed slower. "Can you at least pretend you want to be here?" Courtney snapped, still scrolling, not even looking at me. I turned toward her, not to argue, just to see if I still recognized the face behind the voice. Her jaw clenched. Her heels tapped the floor. She wasn't angry, not really. She was impatient, and that somehow hurt more. "I do want to be here," I said softly. "But I think you don't want me to be." She laughed, short and humorless. "Oh, come on, don't start with the guilt thing. I invited you, didn't I?" Invited. Like I was a favor she regretted extending. "You didn't invite me, Courtney. You told me I was going." That silenced her for a second. Not out of guilt, but calculation. Then sharp. "Well, you always slow things down. If we miss this flight, it'll be on you." The words landed with surgical precision. I looked around. No one seemed to hear. Just the background murmur of announcements and roller bags. But I heard, and more than that, I remembered. How many times had I slowed things down for her? Stayed up with her fever, sat through late-night college calls, waited at bus stops, postponed my own surgeries, delayed every dream I had. Slowing things down had been my role, so she could move faster. I looked down at my hands. The skin was thinner now, the veins more visible. But they had held her entire life. I excused myself and walked slowly to the restroom. Not because I needed it, but because I needed air, even if it was recirculated and filled with travel perfume and nervous sweat. Inside the stall, I closed the door gently and sat down, not on the toilet, but just on the lid, my purse in my lap. The silence here was different, hollow, echoing with muffled voices and the clatter of suitcase wheels outside. I didn't cry. I folded my hands the way my mother taught me, fingers resting, not clenched, and I whispered the same prayer I'd been whispering since Courtney turned 17. Let her remember love. Just once. Let her remember. That was all I said. That was all I had left. Outside, a hand dryer whooshed loudly. A little girl's laughter trailed past the stall. And then, silence again. I reached into my purse and touched the necklace, still warm from my fingers. I almost wished she'd remembered it already, just so she'd come looking, just so I'd see that flash of childhood, that need, that softness. But no one came. I opened the stall, washed my hands slowly, looked into the mirror. The light above buzzed softly, flickering just a little, like it couldn't decide whether to stay on. And for the first time in a long time, I saw myself. Not Courtney's mother, not someone waiting to be remembered. Just Florence Marie, quiet, weathered, but still here. When I came back, Courtney was standing, arms folded, jaw set. She didn't ask if I was okay. "We're boarding," she said flatly. "Let's not make a scene, please." I looked at her, really looked. She wore a cream blazer, lipstick too sharp for morning light, and her hair pulled tight like a crown she made herself. She looked powerful, beautiful even, but not at peace. "Did you lose something?" I asked, careful. She blinked. "What?" "Your necklace. The one I gave you." Her face shifted. Not much, but enough. She touched her throat instinctively, then looked away, pretending to adjust her sleeve. "It's just a trinket. I don't need it." But her voice cracked, just barely. I almost reached into my purse. Almost. Instead, I nodded. "Of course, just a trinket." We moved toward the boarding gate, and for a moment I felt like a shadow following its object. No voice, no substance, just movement. The flight attendant smiled at her, scanned the ticket, and looked at mine. "Are you traveling together?" Courtney didn't answer. I smiled faintly. "No," I said, handing over my torn boarding pass. "Not anymore." The woman looked confused. "Ma'am, this—" Courtney turned around. "Mom, what did you do?" But I was already walking away. I didn't rush. I didn't flinch. And in my purse, the necklace lay nestled between a packet of tissues and a photo no one had asked about. I sat on one of the vinyl benches near the window, watching planes rise into the sky like promises that may or may not be kept. My hands rested on my lap, still holding the torn pieces of the boarding pass. I didn't feel regret. I felt relief, like I'd finally stopped chasing something that was never mine to catch. A woman sat next to me. Maybe my age, maybe a little older. She wore flats and a travel pillow around her neck, the kind of traveler who'd done this too many times to care about appearances. She looked at me for a second and smiled gently. "You flying or waiting for someone?" she asked. I thought about lying, saying I was waiting for a friend or just resting before a connection. But something about her voice, it was soft, real, like warm soup on a sick day, made me answer truthfully. "I was flying," I said, "but I changed my mind." She didn't pry. She nodded as if she understood something unspoken. "My daughter booked this trip for me too," she said. "She said I needed to get out of the house." A pause. "Funny how they want us out, but not too close." That broke something in me. Not painfully, just gently, like an old branch giving way under snowfall. I looked at her and whispered, "Does yours talk to you like you matter?" Her eyes dimmed a little. "Not lately, but I keep showing up. Maybe that's enough." The woman and I sat quietly, two strangers with too many years in our bones and not enough kindness in our homes. "She'll come looking eventually," she said, her voice like the ticking of a clock, calm, certain, resigned. "They always do. Usually when they need something." I didn't answer right away. My fingers were tracing the edge of the torn ticket, its jagged side like the edge of a broken promise. I thought about Courtney's eyes when she realized I wasn't following. Not panic, not sadness, just disbelief, as if I was supposed to be permanent, like the floor beneath her heels. "Maybe," I finally said. "But what if I'm done waiting to be needed?" She looked at me then, really looked. "Then maybe you're finally free." The words didn't land with triumph. They settled like dust. Soft, quiet, undeniable. I pulled the necklace from my purse and placed it in my palm. The small C glittered in the late morning light. "She dropped this," I said. The woman leaned in. "Are you going to give it back?" I stared at the pendant. "I don't know. It's not about the necklace." She smiled. "It never is." We both watched a group of young travelers rush past, loud, laughing, tangled in their own world. One girl had her mother's arm looped through hers. The woman stood up. "My flight's boarding. Good luck, sweetheart." I nodded. And for the first time that morning, I felt something close to steadiness. It didn't take her long. 10 minutes later, Courtney found me sitting near a souvenir shop, sipping the same cold coffee I'd never truly wanted. Her heels struck the floor like accusations. "What was that? Are you serious right now?" Her voice was sharp but hushed, the kind that screams while trying not to draw attention. I looked up calmly. I didn't want to go. She stared, blinking hard. "Since when?" "You let me plan everything. You let me pay for everything." "I let you," I said slowly, "because I thought it would make you happy. I thought it might bring us closer." She threw her hands in the air. "Unbelievable. Do you know how this makes me look?" There it was. How this makes me look. I stood up, my knees resisting again, but I didn't show it. "You'll regret this, Mother," she spat. "You'll sit alone and wish you had come with me." I looked at her, my daughter, who once brought me a wild flower in a chipped mug, who used to climb into my bed when it stormed. I didn't argue. I simply opened my purse, took out the necklace, and pressed it into her hand. "I hope one day," I said, "you remember who gave this to you and why." She didn't reply. She just stood there, the necklace in her palm, staring at it like it was foreign, and I walked away. Not quickly, not angrily, just free. Outside, the air was cool with the kind of breeze that feels like a reminder that the world moves on, whether your heart is heavy or not. I stood at the curb, unsure of where to go. I hadn't planned for this part. I thought I'd be on a plane by now, wedged between pretzels and plastic cups, listening to Courtney tap her laptop. A taxi pulled up, the driver leaning over to roll down the window. "Need a ride, ma'am?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, home, please." He opened the door for me and I eased in, folding my coat carefully over my lap like something sacred. A few minutes into the ride, he glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Coming back early?" I smiled faintly. I didn't go. "Missed the flight?" I looked out the window. "No, I just chose not to go." He didn't pry, just nodded, respectful. Then softly he said, "Good for you. Not many people have the strength to walk away." Strength. It didn't feel like strength at the gate. It felt like breaking, like surrender. But maybe that's how strength arrives. Not loud and triumphant, but quiet and shaking and finally still. We passed a row of trees, their leaves beginning to turn. Autumn was always my favorite. Things fall, yes, but they fall with color, with grace, and sometimes letting go is the most beautiful thing of all. When I unlocked the door, the sound of the latch felt louder than usual, like the house was exhaling after holding its breath. The clock in the hallway still ticked, but everything else was still. The kind of silence that makes you realize how long you've been living as background noise in your own life. I set my purse on the table. The faint scent of lavender still lingered, from the sachet I kept inside, a habit from my mother. She said it kept sadness polite. I wasn't sure I believed that anymore. I walked into the kitchen and opened the drawer where I'd hidden the photo earlier. The one from years ago, the red coat, the sunflower magnet, that bright, innocent smile. For a long time, I just stared. I wanted to feel anger, or relief, or pride for standing up for myself. But what I felt was quiet, like a wave that had finally stopped crashing. I ran my thumb over the picture. My own eyes looked tired even then, but soft. That woman had hope. That woman believed that love, once planted, always bloomed again someday. Maybe she was wrong. Or maybe she just hadn't waited long enough. The refrigerator hummed behind me. A clock somewhere ticked twice, paused, then kept going. I whispered, "She'll remember someday." And even if she didn't, I realized I would still be here. Still myself. Still Florence Marie. That somehow was enough. The phone blinked as I entered the living room. One missed call. Courtney. No voicemail, no message. I stood there, staring at the screen, the light blinking like a question I didn't owe an answer to. She hadn't called because she was worried. She'd called because things hadn't gone her way. Maybe the boarding gate attendants had asked too many questions. Maybe someone saw her standing alone and wondered where her mother had gone. I didn't call back. I placed the phone face down on the coffee table and sat in my usual chair, the one near the window that catches the last light of the day. My knees sighed as I settled in, but I didn't mind. Pain at least tells you where you are. I reached for the knitting I hadn't touched in weeks, the same half-made scarf I'd started when Courtney first asked me to travel with her. I had imagined wearing it on the trip, imagined her complimenting it. Now I pulled the yarn slowly, unraveling it. Thread by thread, I undid what I had started. Not out of bitterness, but because I didn't need it anymore. The scarf had been for a version of me that waited for her affection, like spring after winter. But this woman, this Florence Marie, had sat in silence and seen the truth, and still survived it. The last loop slipped loose. I placed the yarn gently back into the basket. The next morning, I woke to another message. Not a voicemail, a text. "Courtney, you think you're so noble ruining the trip like that? You embarrassed me. Everyone's asking where you are. No, are you okay? No, I'm sorry. Just, you embarrassed me." I sat on the edge of my bed, the phone still in my hand, my feet resting on the old rug with the faded blue flowers. My husband and I bought it after our 5th anniversary, back when we still believed small things lasted forever. I read the message again, not because I didn't understand it, but because I needed to feel it. There was a time I would have replied right away, apologized, explained, promised to make it up to her, but not this time. Instead, I placed the phone down gently on the nightstand, next to my reading glasses and the lavender sachet that had begun to lose its scent. I whispered, "No, Courtney, I didn't ruin the trip. I saved what was left of myself." Outside, a dog barked. Somewhere a lawnmower hummed to life. Life continued. I opened the window. The autumn breeze carried in the smell of wet leaves and something softer underneath. Maybe rain coming, maybe change. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself to anyone. I simply made the bed, folded the blanket, and began my morning like a woman who still had her dignity and wasn't afraid to live in it. I went to the store that afternoon, not because I needed much, just bread and a few apples, but because I needed the motion of ordinary life. The grocery aisles were familiar, the same soft music playing overhead, the same cracked tile near the frozen peas. I moved slowly, letting the silence between products fill the space where her voice used to echo in my mind. As I reached for a can of soup, I heard it, a voice behind me. "You okay, Mrs. Florence?" I turned. It was Maya, the cashier, with kind eyes and chipped purple nails. She always bagged my eggs like they were made of gold. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I said, offering a small smile. "You look tired today." I nodded. "Tired in a good way." She tilted her head, like after cleaning out a room you never wanted to touch. I laughed softly. Something like that. We stood there for a moment in front of the Campbells and lentils, two women sharing something that didn't need explaining. Maya reached out and touched my arm gently. "Well, whatever it is, I hope it gives you peace." I wanted to hug her. I didn't, but I held her gaze long enough for her to know that she'd seen me, really seen me. And in that aisle, between coupons and canned goods, I felt it, the subtle stitch of healing beginning. That evening, after dinner and dishes, I opened the drawer in my bedroom where I kept things I hadn't touched in years. Letters, old birthday cards, the dried corsage from my husband's funeral. Time had yellowed their edges, but not their meaning. I wasn't searching for anything in particular, just breathing inside the past for a moment, and then I found it. A letter from Courtney, written in crayon, folded twice, the paper thin from age. To Mommy, when you're sad. I unfolded it carefully, as if it were sacred scripture. Inside, her handwriting slanted and crooked, read, I love you more than cake. You are the best mommy. I will never leave you. When you are sad, think of our tent fort and the time we made pancakes and burned them and still ate them. I will always need you. I placed the letter against my chest. That little girl still lived somewhere, buried deep beneath the woman who now called me a burden. And yet, that version of her had written the truth, because even if she didn't remember that promise, I did. I folded the letter again, gently, and placed it back with the others. And as I closed the drawer, I whispered, I'll always need you too, sweetheart, even if it's from a distance. Outside, the street lamp flickered on. Inside, the house felt a little less quiet, and my heart, still tired, felt a little less alone. The next morning, I wrote her a letter. Not a text, not an email. A real letter with ink that bled slightly when I pressed too hard, and the soft scratch of pen against paper that sounded like memory itself. I didn't write to scold her. I didn't write to explain my pain. I wrote to leave a trace, something she could find one day in a drawer when life had quieted around her. I wrote, Dear Courtney, I tore the tickets, not out of anger but out of understanding. I finally understood that love given without respect is just silence wearing a smile. I didn't want to take a trip where I was a passenger in your life, unseen, unheard, unnecessary. You may not understand now. You may feel wronged. But one day, when your pace slows and you search for warmth in the people who should love you gently, I hope you remember me. And I hope by then you'll be ready to love without shame, without noise, and without needing someone to shrink so you can shine. Love, Mom. I folded it slowly, placed it in an envelope, wrote her name on the front, but I didn't seal it, and I didn't add a stamp. Some letters aren't meant to be mailed, they're meant to be released. I placed it on the mantel, beside the faded photo of her in that red coat. Let her find it when she's ready. It was 2 weeks later when I heard from her again, not directly. A friend of mine, Edith, had attended a fundraiser downtown, one of those polished affairs with wine glasses so thin they break from a stare. She saw Courtney there. She looked radiant, Edith told me as we stood beside my rose bushes pruning in the quiet. But tired, something around the eyes. I nodded. I knew that kind of tired, not from work, but from the weight of pretending nothing's broken. She mentioned you, Edith added. That made me pause. She said you'd changed, that you were getting dramatic in old age. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. She also said, Edith continued softly, that you tore the tickets like a movie scene. No shouting, no threats, just silence. I kept pruning, one stem at a time. Snip, breathe, snip again. Then Edith said, someone overheard her whisper to a friend. I didn't know she had that in her. That stayed with me, not as praise, not even recognition, just a realization. Courtney had seen me all those years, but only now in my refusal did she truly witness me, not as her mother, but as a woman. And it took silence, not sacrifice, to be heard. That night, I didn't cry. I lit a candle in the kitchen, let it burn down low, and whispered only one sentence into the flickering light. She's starting to see. Sunday came, as it always did. slow and quiet. I set the table for one. Out of habit, I still placed 2 plates at first. One for me, one for tradition. But I took hers away before I sat down, gently, as if removing it too fast might crack the air between us. I made roast chicken the way she liked it, with rosemary and lemon, not because I expected her to show up, but because cooking it reminded me I once knew how to care with my hands, not just with my heart. The smell filled the house, warm, real. I ate slowly, one bite, one memory. The time she burned her mouth because she couldn't wait for it to cool. The way she used to lick her fingers and giggle, "Don't tell Dad." And then, the last time we ate together before the trip, she had looked at her phone more than her plate, barely touched the food, said, "I don't eat this kind of stuff anymore." That hurt more than I let on. But today, I let the flavors take their time, let the silence rest beside me like a guest who doesn't ask for anything. When I finished, I left her plate on the counter, empty, spotless, an echo, not an offering. A quiet reminder, I'm still capable of love. Even if it's not received, even if no one says thank you, even if I'm the only one who notices. 2 days later, it came. An envelope in the mailbox, pale pink, expensive paper, her handwriting on the front. Mom, just that. No stamps, no postal marks. Hand delivered. I stood there on the porch, sunlight brushing the wooden railing, my fingers hesitating at the edge of the seal. For a second, I didn't want to open it, as if the moment before knowing held more peace than whatever words waited inside. But I did. Inside was a card, blank on the outside except for a tiny gold imprint. Thank you. I opened it. Her writing was neater than I remembered. Practiced. Careful. I'm not ready to talk. I'm still angry, still confused, but I haven't stopped thinking about the necklace and how you handed it to me without saying a word. You could have shouted. You could have cursed me. But you didn't. You just walked away with so much grace it hurt. I don't know how to carry what you gave me, but I'm trying to hold it. Please don't give up on me yet. No signature. Just those last words, floating in the white space, like a fragile bridge not yet built. I folded the card slowly, pressed it to my chest. Then I placed it beside her crayon letter in the drawer. They didn't cancel each other out. They sat side by side, like 2 versions of the same soul, still learning how to love. That afternoon, I sat in the old wooden chair by the garden, the one my husband built with his hands before his joints began to ache. It creaked beneath me, familiar and forgiving. The chrysanthemums were blooming late this year. Gold, deep red, soft white, like the garden had decided to hold back its beauty until the cold dared it to. I held the card in my lap. The paper had weight, but the words inside were what anchored me. Please don't give up on me yet. There was no apology, no promises, just a seed, unplanted, unsure, still a seed. I looked out at the garden, remembering the first time Courtney helped me plant bulbs. She was 6, wore mismatched gloves and dug shallow holes. The flowers barely grew that spring. But she had insisted on checking every day, saying, "They'll come, Mommy, they have to." Maybe love is the same. Maybe it doesn't come back how or when we want it, but it remembers. I leaned back and closed my eyes. The sun was warm on my face, the kind of warmth you don't expect in October. And for the first time in weeks, I whispered something not out of pain, but hope. I'm still here, baby. Not waiting, not begging, just open. The garden chair creaked again as if agreeing. Some bridges don't need to be built in a day. Sometimes they rise one word at a time. Later that evening, as I reached to silence my phone before bed, I noticed something. A voicemail, dated the day after the airport. I hadn't seen it. Maybe I'd ignored the notification. Maybe I wasn't ready to hear it. But now, I pressed play. At first just noise, Wind, footsteps, the shuffle of a bag. Then her voice, quieter than usual, like she wasn't sure she wanted to speak at all. "Hi, I'm in the lounge, alone." Pause. I keep looking at the seat next to me and thinking, she should be here. But then I remember what I said, how I said it. Another pause, longer this time. I don't know why I get like that. I always feel like I'm running out of time, like everything's going to fall apart if I don't keep pushing. But you weren't the thing falling apart. I was. Silence again. Then, "You were right to tear the tickets. I didn't deserve your company that day. I don't know how to be your daughter anymore, but I want to learn. If you'll let me." Click. End of message. I sat on the edge of the bed, the phone resting in my hand like something newly alive. Tears came, slow and soundless. Not from pain this time, but from recognition. She hadn't said, "I'm sorry." She'd said, "I see you." And that was enough for now. The next morning, I reached into the yarn basket. The old scarf, the one I had unraveled, sat coiled, loose, like a story paused mid-sentence. I picked up the needles again. Not because I needed something to do with my hands, but because, for the first time in a long while, my heart felt steady enough to hold softness again. I didn't start a new pattern. I used the same color, the same rhythm, the same beginning, but this time I let the stitches be looser, more forgiving. I didn't rush. I didn't count. I just knit, one quiet loop at a time. Outside wind brushed the trees gently, carrying the scent of dry leaves and earth. The house felt different, not fuller, but clearer, as if something invisible had been swept clean. I paused halfway through and touched the scarf to my cheek. Warm. It would take days to finish, maybe weeks, but I wasn't making it for the trip anymore. I was making it for a winter that would come, and perhaps a moment when she might show up at the door, chilled, uncertain, in need of something that felt like home. Not a grand gesture, just a scarf, soft, worn with love. The kind of thing you wrap around someone without asking why they came back. And if that day never came, I'd wear it myself. And remember, I was never just waiting. I was still living. October 30th, my birthday. I didn't expect a call, and I certainly didn't expect a visit. But when the sun rose that morning, golden through the curtain lace, I allowed myself one small hope, the kind that doesn't ache too much when it goes unmet. I baked a small apple tart, just one. No candles, no tablecloth, just cinnamon and quiet. At noon I received a text, not from Courtney, from my cousin Elaine. "Thinking of you today, Flo. Still the strongest woman I know." I thanked her, sat by the window, ate a slice of the tart, and then at 4:17 p.m. my phone buzzed. "Courtney, forgot it was your birthday. Sorry, been slammed at work. Hope it was fine." No emoji, no warmth, just those few clipped words, as if affection had to punch out early. I stared at the message. My thumb hovered above the screen. For a second, I wanted to respond. "I raised you. I remembered every birthday, even the ones you wanted to forget." But I didn't. Instead, I placed the phone face down and whispered to the quiet room, "I had peace today. That's more than enough." And it was, because I'd learned something. Love that's not freely given isn't worth begging for. And peace, true peace, sometimes blooms in the soil left behind by absence. The tart was sweet, the silence was gentle, and the scarf. It grew longer by the hour. A week later, just after dusk, I heard it, the soft knock. Not the urgent rap of a neighbor, not the mechanical thud of a delivery. A hesitant knock, like someone unsure if they were welcome. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door. Courtney stood there. No suitcase, no laptop bag, no blazer, just her, in a gray sweater that swallowed her shoulders and eyes that didn't quite meet mine. "Hi," she said. My throat tightened, but I answered softly, "Hi." She didn't step forward. She looked at the porch light above my head, then at the floorboards. "I was driving. I wasn't planning to stop. I just ended up here." I didn't invite her in. I stepped aside, and when she entered, I noticed it. How small she looked in the house that once echoed with her childhood laughter. She smelled faintly of cold air and regret. She sat at the kitchen table. Her eyes landed on the scarf beside the teapot. "You finished it?" "Not yet," I said. "Still working." She nodded. Then, after a pause, "I remembered your birthday. I just couldn't call. I didn't know what to say." I poured her tea, set the cup down without a word. Sometimes grace is quieter than apology. And when she looked at me, really looked, I saw the girl who once burned pancakes and whispered, "I need you." And I didn't need her to say it again. I just needed her to come. Courtney held the teacup carefully, like it might break if she breathed too hard. It was the one with the blue violets, her childhood favorite. She used to ask for it on rainy days, saying it made the cocoa taste sweeter. I hadn't chosen it for her. She had opened the cupboard and picked it herself. "I don't remember the last time I sat here," she said. I did. Thanksgiving 4 years ago. She had stayed for 22 minutes and left before the pie cooled. "I remember," I said gently. She looked into her cup. "I was cruel," she murmured. I didn't flinch. I didn't rush to comfort her. Some truths need to sit between people like a stone placed on the table. Heavy, visible, real. "Yes," I said. "You were." She swallowed hard. "I didn't know how to stop performing," she whispered. "Even with you, especially with you." I reached for the scarf in my lap, ran my fingers across the newest stitches. "You don't have to perform here." She blinked quickly. "I don't know how to be still." "Then let this be your first practice." She didn't cry. She just sat, drinking slowly like the tea was teaching her how to slow down. Outside, the wind rustled the trees. Inside, the air shifted, not with forgiveness, but with presence. Sometimes before healing, there's simply being. And that night, she chose to be, with me. It was nearly 10 p.m. when she looked up and said softly, "Do you mind if I stay the night?" The last time she slept under this roof, she was still calling me Mommy. I nodded. "The guest room is clean." She smiled faintly. I meant my old room. My chest ached. I hadn't touched that room much. The bed was still made. Her posters were gone, but the bookshelf remained, filled with trophies she hadn't looked at in years. I led her upstairs, the floorboards creaking like they were whispering memories. She stood at the doorway and stared. "I used to hate this wallpaper," she said. "You said it made the room feel small." She stepped inside slowly. "I think I just didn't like feeling safe. It scared me more than chaos." I didn't follow her in. I let her close the door. Downstairs, I folded the scarf and turned off the light in the kitchen. The silence was different now, not empty, but waiting. At midnight, I passed by her room once more. The door was slightly ajar. She was asleep, one arm curled under her cheek, the same way she slept as a child after long, tearful days. I stood there for a moment, hand resting on the frame, heart heavier than joy, but lighter than sorrow. Then I whispered, "Welcome home," though she couldn't hear me. Some words aren't meant for ears, they're meant for souls. I woke early, as I always do. The kettle hissed on the stove, and the smell of bread warming in the oven filled the kitchen like memory. I moved slowly, folding napkins, setting out 2 plates, not from habit this time, but with quiet intention. When she appeared at the doorway, barefoot and squinting from the morning sun, she looked younger, not in body, but in spirit, like something had uncoiled inside her during sleep. "Did I miss breakfast?" she asked, voice still thick with sleep. "No," I said. "You're right on time." She sat, curling her legs under her on the chair, just like she used to. before offices and deadlines taught her how to sit properly. We ate in silence at first. Just the clink of forks, the hush of warm tea being poured. Then as she spread jam on her toast, she said, "I had a dream last night." I waited. I was in the airport again, but this time I was the one holding the torn tickets. And you were walking away. She paused. I kept calling your name, but you didn't turn around. I set my cup down. "I didn't hear you," I said gently. Sometimes when a heart has been bruised too long, it goes quiet. She nodded, eyes glistening. "I'm scared you won't come back if I call again." I reached across the table and took her hand. "I never left," I whispered. "I just stopped chasing." After breakfast, I stepped outside to check the soil. The morning dew still clung to the edges of the rose petals, catching the light like tiny stars. My garden was modest, but faithful, always blooming where it could, always surviving quiet winters. Courtney followed, holding her mug with both hands like it grounded her. "I never noticed this before," she said. "You never looked," I replied gently. She nodded. "You always came out here when you were upset. It helped me listen to what I was feeling." She walked along the stone path, stopping in front of the hydrangeas. "I thought you were hiding." I smiled. I was, but not from you. From what I couldn't say without breaking. She crouched down and touched one of the blossoms. Her nails were still polished but chipped, as if life had finally begun interrupting her schedule. "I used to think peace looked like perfection," she said quietly. "Now I think it might look like this." "Messy," I offered. "Slow, a little wild." She smiled. "Exactly." We stood in silence as a breeze moved through the leaves. Then she asked, "Do you think I can change?" I looked at her, not as the child I raised or the woman who hurt me, but as someone finally standing still. "I think you already are." She didn't cry. Neither did I. But something softened between us. Not forgiveness yet, but the door it walks through. That afternoon, Courtney asked if she could borrow something to wear. Said she hadn't planned on staying, hadn't packed anything except tension and silence. I led her to my room, opened the old wooden wardrobe that still smelled faintly of cedar and lavender. She sifted through the hangers, her fingers brushing against blouses and scarves, pausing when she reached the navy blue dress, the one I wore to her college graduation. "This one," she whispered, pulling it gently forward. I watched her. "That was a good day," she said. "It was," I replied. "You barely looked at me when you crossed the stage. But I looked at you the whole time." She turned the dress over in her hands, the fabric soft, worn at the edges. I was so sure I had done everything on my own. "You had," I said, "but not alone." She looked at me, eyes filled with something more honest than tears. Awareness. "Can I wear it?" "It's yours," I said. She held it against herself, then stepped toward the mirror. And for the first time in years, I saw her study herself not with critique, but curiosity, like she was meeting a version of herself she had buried beneath ambition and armor. And as I watched her turn slowly in the mirror, the hem brushing her knees, I realized sometimes love returns not in apologies, but in borrowed dresses, worn by a daughter rediscovering softness in her mother's reflection. That evening, just before the light faded, Courtney lingered by the hallway bookshelf, the one filled with photos no one ever asked about anymore. She reached for the frame with the red border. "You kept this one?" she asked. It was the photo from her 7th birthday, the day we picnicked in the park. She had dirt on her knees and frosting on her chin. I was behind her, clapping, half blurred but beaming. "You didn't like that picture," she said. "I loved it," I replied. "You just didn't see it." She held the frame with both hands, her thumb tracing the glass. "I thought you only saw my mistakes." "I saw all of it," I said softly. "But your joy, that's what I cherished." She sat down on the edge of the couch, still holding the frame. "Mom," her voice trembled, "when did we get so far apart?" I sat beside her. Not all distances happen at once. Sometimes they grow in silence. She looked at me. Really looked. Do you think I can fix this? I took her hand, still warm from holding the frame. Don't fix it, I said. Feel it. Let it change you. She nodded slowly, resting the photo on her lap like it was heavier than memory. And for the first time, I saw the weight of it, not on me, but on her. Love doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it returns with quiet questions and the courage to ask them. Before she left the next morning, Courtney stood by the door, fingers grazing the edge of her coat, like she wasn't sure if she should put it on just yet. I don't want this to be another moment, she said. I want to come back. Not just for dinner, for you. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let her words hang there, uncertain but brave, like a child reaching for the light switch in the dark. Then I walked to the drawer beside the entryway and pulled something out. Wrapped in tissue paper, small, light. What's this? She asked. I placed it in her hand. Open it when you're ready, not before. She hesitated, but then nodded, slipping it into her bag without a word. We hugged, not tight, not desperate, just long enough. After she drove off, I stood at the window, watching the dust settle behind her tires. The sky was soft gray, and the wind had picked up. In her bag was the necklace, not the one with the C, a different one. The locket she gave me when she was 12, with a photo of us inside and the words "Forever Your Girl" scratched into the back. She had forgotten it existed, but I hadn't. Because mothers don't forget love, even when it forgets them. And now, that memory was hers to hold when she was ready. It was a week later when I heard the knock again. Not hesitant this time. 3 soft, steady taps. When I opened the door, there she was. No suitcase, no apology in her mouth. Just Courtney, holding something in her hand, the locket. She had opened it, and she'd worn it. I found it, she said. I smiled gently. No, sweetheart. You remembered it. She stepped forward, then paused. This house, it feels smaller now, she said. You got taller, I teased. But we both knew what she meant. It wasn't the walls that had shrunk. It was the space between us that had finally begun to close. She reached for the doorknob, fingers trembling. May I come in? She hadn't asked that since she was a teenager, after slamming her door during a fight and creeping back in with swollen eyes. This time, her voice wasn't guilty. It was reverent. You never needed to ask, I whispered. But I'm glad you did. She opened the door herself, walked in slowly, and as the door swung closed behind her, I thought, the same door she once left through in silence. She now opened with trembling hands. Not everything needs to be fixed in one visit, but she came back, by choice. That's what mattered. Love returned, not as an event, but as a decision. One knock, one gesture, one woman who found her way back home. Later that afternoon, while she helped me sort through boxes in the attic, Courtney found it. The red wool coat. Tiny. Faded. With the same wooden buttons I sewed on myself all those years ago. She held it up. I can't believe this still exists. I smiled. You wore it the day we took that photo. The one on the fridge. She didn't laugh. She didn't mock its oldness. She hugged it. It still smells like you, she whispered. I sat down on the edge of an old trunk, watching her. That was the year you said you'd never leave me, I said, almost to myself. I lied, she replied, but not because I wanted to. She sat beside me, the coat in her lap. I thought leaving made me strong, she said. But I think it just made me scared. You had to go, I said gently. But you didn't have to forget. She nodded slowly. I think I was trying so hard to become someone that I didn't realize I was stepping over the one person who made me possible. We sat there in the dust and fading light. 2 women, not mother and daughter, but equals, stripped of pride. She held the coat tighter. Then she looked at me and asked, Can I keep it? Of course, I said. You were always supposed to. and in that moment I saw it. She wasn't holding a coat. She was holding her beginning. That evening I returned to my usual spot by the garden. The old wooden chair, still creaky, still faithful. The air smelled of damp leaves and turned earth, and the sky wore that golden hue that only appears before a forgiving sunset. I brought out my scarf, the one nearly finished now, and then I heard the screen door open. Courtney stepped out. No phone, no distractions. Just her and a cup of tea. "Is that seat taken?" she asked. I shook my head. She sat beside me, knees close enough to touch, but not quite. We watched the garden for a while, not speaking, just breathing together. The breeze carried a silence that didn't hurt. After a long pause, she said, "You always sat out here. I thought you were hiding." "I was healing." She nodded, staring at the trees. "I didn't know people could heal quietly." "Most real healing happens that way," I said, looping another stitch. She looked at the scarf. "Will you teach me?" I paused, surprised. "To knit." "To sit still," she said. I looked over, met her eyes, not wide with apology, but open with want. "You just did," I whispered. She smiled, then leaned her head gently on my shoulder. We didn't say another word, and for the first time in years, the space beside me wasn't empty. It was hers, because she chose to sit there, not out of duty, but love. Weeks passed. We never rebooked the trip. Courtney never asked, and I never offered. Not because the idea was gone, but because something greater had taken its place. Presence. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I found the torn ticket pieces tucked in the side pocket of my purse. I had forgotten they were still there. I held them in my hands, delicate now, soft from time, and felt no anger, only clarity. That flight wasn't meant to happen, because it wasn't about the destination. It was about the departure that needed to be made, from silence, from disrespect, from the version of me who waited to be chosen. Courtney walked into the room just as I was pressing the paper flat. "What's that?" "Our trip," I said. "The one we didn't take." She looked down at the pieces. "I'm glad we missed it," she said softly. "Why?" She met my eyes. "Because if we hadn't, I don't think I'd be here. Really here." I placed the pieces back into the drawer next to the letters, the photo, the locket. Not trash, not shame, just history. We didn't need a boarding pass anymore. We had already arrived, in the same room at the same pace, with hearts no longer dragging luggage of resentment behind them. She smiled, folding a dish towel beside me, and for the first time, I felt it. We were going somewhere, together, without leaving home. The scarf was finished. It lay across my lap, heavy in the way things are when they've been made with care, with patience, with pain. Courtney sat across from me, winding yarn into a loose ball, her fingers now learning slowness without shame. "I didn't think you'd finish it," she said. "Neither did I replied, smoothing the last row with my palm. But every evening, one stitch at a time, it came together. She leaned forward. "Can I see?" I handed it to her. She wrapped it around her neck, not like someone trying on a gift, but like someone remembering warmth. "It feels like love," she said quietly. I smiled. "That's what I was weaving." She looked at me, something soft behind her eyes. "And it's mine?" I reached out and tucked the edge of the scarf beneath her chin. "No, Courtney, it's ours." She didn't answer right away. She just pulled the fabric close, eyes glistening, mouth steady. Then she stood, walked over to me and hugged me. Slow, strong, present, and in that embrace, I felt all the things that words could never carry. The apology, the gratitude, the promise. She didn't need to say them. She had stitched them herself, with her return, with her silence, with her change. Outside, the first snow began to fall, soft as ash, quiet as breath. And I knew. The season had turned. Snow covered the garden now, not thick, not harsh, just enough to soften the edges of everything. The rose bushes were bare, the hydrangeas asleep beneath their blankets of frost. And yet the quiet held a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. Courtney sat beside me, wrapped in the scarf. Her breath made small clouds in the air. She was humming something. I didn't recognize the tune, but I knew the feeling. Peace. I poured us both tea, the same cups, the same silence. But now it was filled with presence, not absence. She looked out at the garden. It's still beautiful, even when it rests, I said. She nodded, especially then. I leaned back in my chair, the creak familiar, the rhythm comforting, and I realized all those years I spent trying to be enough for her, trying not to be a burden, trying to keep the peace. I had forgotten that I was the root, not the leaf. I was not her weight. I was her foundation. And now she knew it too. A bird landed on the fence, light as memory. We watched it in silence. Then she whispered, "I think I finally see you." I reached for her hand. "I think I finally see me too." And together we sat. Two women who had nearly lost each other, now blooming quietly beneath the snow. That night I walked through the house, turning off lights one by one. The hallway, the kitchen, the small lamp near the photo shelf. But in the living room I paused. The lamp by the window, the one that casts a soft circle of gold on the rug, I left it on. Courtney was asleep upstairs. The house was still, but the light stayed, not because anyone needed it to find their way, but because some lights aren't about direction. They're about welcome. They're about saying, "You're not alone anymore." I sat for a while in the glow, the scarf draped over the armchair, the teacup still warm. I didn't need a grand ending. I didn't need an apology to be framed or a speech to be made. I had something better. Presence, respect. A peace born not from forgetting what hurt, but from finally being seen. Outside, the snow continued to fall, steady, silent, soft. And inside, something else had finally settled too. A daughter's pride had broken just enough to let love in, and a mother's silence had bloomed into truth. So I whispered into the golden hush, "Respect isn't inherited, it's earned." Day by day, the lamp flickered gently and stayed on.